Erving Goffman, a Canadian-born sociologist and writer, was considered the most influential American sociologist of the 20th century. In 2007 he was listed by the Times Higher Education Guide as the sixth most cited author in the humanities and social sciences, behind Anthony Giddens and ahead of Jürgen Habermas. Goffman was the 73rd president of the American Sociological Association. His best-known contribution to social theory is his study of symbolic interaction. This took the form of dramaturgical analysis, beginning with his 1959 book, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. Goffman's other major works include Asylums, Stigma, Interaction Ritual, Frame Analysis, and Forms of Talk. His major areas of study included the sociology of everyday life, social interaction, the social construction of self, social organization of experience, and particular elements of social life such as total institutions and stigmas. Life. Goffman was born June 11, 1922, in Manville, Alberta, Canada, to Max Goffman and Anne Goffman, now copyrightee Avbuck. He was from a family of Ukrainian Jews who had emigrated to Canada at the turn of the century. He had an older sibling, Frances Bay, who became an actress. The family moved to Dauphin, Manitoba, where his father operated a successful tailoring business. From 1937 Goffman attended St. John's Technical High School in Winnipeg, where his family had moved that year. In 1939 he enrolled at the University of Manitoba, majoring in chemistry. He interrupted his studies and moved to Ottawa to work in the film industry for the National Film Board of Canada, established by John Grierson. Later he developed an interest in sociology. Also during this time, he met the renowned North American sociologist, Dennis Wrong. Their meeting motivated Goffman to leave the University of Manitoba and enroll at the University of Toronto, where he studied under C.W.M. Hart and Ray Birdestelle, graduating in 1945 with a BA in sociology and anthropology. Later he moved to the University of Chicago, where he received an MA and PhD in sociology. For his doctoral dissertation, from December 1949 to May 1951 he lived and collected ethnographic data on the island of Unst in the Shetland Islands. In 1952 Goffman married Angelica Choate. In 1953, their son Thomas was born. Angelica suffered from mental illness and committed suicide in 1964. Outside his academic career, Goffman was known for his interest, and relative success, in the stock market and in gambling. At one point, in pursuit of his hobbies and ethnographic studies, he became a pit boss at a Las Vegas casino. In 1981 Goffman married sociolinguist Gillian Sankoff. The following year, their daughter Alice was born. In 1982 Goffman died in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on 19th or 20th November, of stomach cancer. Alice Goffman is also a sociologist. Career. The research that Goffman had done in Unst inspired him to write his first major work, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. After graduating from the University of Chicago, in 1954 €57 he was an assistant to the athletic director at the National Institute for Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland. Participant observation done there led to his essays on mental illness and total institutions which came to form his second book, Asylums, Essays on the Social Situation of Mental Patients and Other Inmates. In 1958 Goffman became a faculty member in the sociology department at the University of California, Berkeley, first as a visiting professor, then from 1962 as a full professor. In 1968 he moved to the University of Pennsylvania, receiving the Benjamin Franklin Chair in Sociology and Anthropology, due largely to the efforts of Del Hymes, a former colleague at Berkeley. In 1969 he became a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. In 1970 Goffman became a co-founder of the American Association for the Abolition of Involuntary Mental Hospitalization and co-authored its platform statement. In 1971 he published Relations in Public, in which he tied together many of his ideas about everyday life, seen from a sociological perspective. Another major book of his, Frame Analysis, came out in 1974. He received a Guggenheim Fellowship for 1977, €78. In 1979, Goffman received the Cooley Mead Award for Distinguished Scholarship, from the section on social psychology of the American Sociological Association. He was elected the 73rd President of the American Sociological Association, serving in 1981, €82. He was, however, unable to deliver the presidential address in person due to progressing illness. Posthumously, in 1983, he received the Mead Award from the Society for the Study of Symbolic Interaction. Influence and legacy. Goffman was influenced by Herbert Blumer, Permel Durkheim, Sigmund Freud, Everett Hughes, Alfred Radcliffe Brown, Talsott Parsons, Alfred Schwann-Tz, Georg Simmel and W. Lloyd Warner. Hughes was the most influential of his teachers, according to Tom Burns. Gary Allen Fine and Philip Manning state that Goffman never engaged in serious dialogue with other theorists. His work has, however, influenced and been discussed by numerous contemporary sociologists, including Anthony Giddens, Jürgen Habermas and Pierre Bourdieu. Though Goffman is often associated with the symbolic interaction school of sociological thought, he did not see himself as a representative of it, and so Fine and Manning conclude that he does not easily fit within a specific school of sociological thought. His ideas are also difficult to reduce to a number of key themes. His work can be broadly described as developing a comparative, qualitative sociology that aimed to produce generalizations about human behavior. Goffman made substantial advances in the study of face-to-face interaction, elaborated the dramaturgical approach to human interaction, and developed numerous concepts that have had a massive influence, particularly in the field of the micro-sociology of everyday life. Many of his works have concerned the organization of everyday behavior, a concept he termed interaction order. He contributed to the sociological concept of framing, to game theory, and to the study of interactions and linguistics. With regard to the latter, he argued that the activity of speaking must be seen as a social rather than a linguistic construct. From a methodological perspective, Goffman often employed qualitative approaches, specifically ethnography, most famously in his study of social aspects of mental illness, in particular the functioning of total institutions. Overall, his contributions are valued as an attempt to create a theory that bridges the agency and structure divide for popularizing social constructionism, symbolic interaction, conversation analysis, ethnographic studies, and the study and importance of individual interactions. His influence extended far beyond sociology. For example, his work provided the assumptions of much current research in language and social interaction within the discipline of communication. In 2007, Goffman was listed by the Times Higher Education Guide as the sixth most cited author in the humanities and social sciences, behind Anthony Giddens and ahead of Jürgen Habermas. His popularity with the general public has been attributed to his writing style, described as sardonic, satiric, jokey, and as ironic and self-consciously literary, and to its being more accessible than that of most academics. His style has also been influential in academia, and is credited with popularizing a less formal style in academic publications. His students included Carol Brooks Gardner, Charles Goodwin, Marjorie Goodwin, John Loafland, Gary Marks, Harvey Sachs, Emanuel Skigloff, David Sudnow and Evita Zeebavel. Despite his influence, according to Fine and Manning, there are remarkably few scholars who are continuing his work, nor has there been a Goffman school. Thus, his impact on social theory has been simultaneously great and modest. Fine and Manning attribute the lack of subsequent Goffman-style research and writing to the nature of his signature style, which they consider very difficult to duplicate, and also to his writing style and subjects not being widely valued in the social sciences. With regard to his style, Fine and Manning remark that he tends to be seen either as a scholar whose style is difficult to reproduce, and therefore daunting to those who might wish to emulate his style, or as a scholar whose work was transitional, bridging the work of the Chicago School and that of contemporary sociologists, and thus of less interest to sociologists than the classics of either of those two groups. With regard to his subjects, Fine and Manning observed that the topic of behavior in public places is often stigmatized as being trivial, and thus unworthy of serious scholarly attention. Nonetheless, Fine and Manning note that Goffman is the most influential American sociologist of the 20th century. Eliot and Turner see him as a revered figure, an outlaw theorist who came to exemplify the best of the sociological imagination, and perhaps the first postmodern sociological theorist. Early works. Goffman's early works consist of his graduate writings of 1949 53. His master's thesis was a survey of audience responses to a radio soap opera, Big Sister. One of its most important elements was a critique of his research methodology, of experimental logic and of variable analysis. Other writings of the period include Symbols of Class Status and On Cooling the Mark-Out. His doctoral dissertation, Communication Conduct in an Island Community, presented a model of communication strategies in face-to-face interaction, and focused on how everyday life rituals affect public projections of self. Presentation of Self. Goffman's The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life was published in 1956, with a revised edition in 1959. He had developed the book's core ideas from his doctoral dissertation. It was Goffman's first and most famous book, for which he received the American Sociological Association's 1961 McIver Award. Goffman describes the theatrical performances that occur in face-to-face interactions. He holds that when an individual comes in contact with another person, he attempts to control or guide the impression that the other person will form of him, by altering his own setting, appearance and manner. At the same time, the person that the individual is interacting with attempts to form an impression of, and obtain information about, the individual. Goffman also believes that participants in social interactions engage in certain practices to avoid embarrassing themselves or others. Society is not homogeneous. We must act differently in different settings. This recognition led Goffman to his dramaturgical analysis. He saw a connection between the kinds of acts that people put on in their daily lives and theatrical performances. In a social interaction, as in a theatrical performance, there is an onstage area where actors appear before the audience. This is where positive self-concepts and desired impressions are offered. But there is, as well, a backstage, a hidden, private area where individuals can be themselves and drop their societal roles and identities. Asylums. Goffman is sometimes credited with having in 1957 coined the term total institution, though Fine and Manning note that he had heard it in lectures by Everett Hughes in reference to any type of institution in which people are treated alike and in which behavior is regulated. Regardless of whether Goffman coined the term total institution, he popularized it with his 1961 book, Asylums, Essays on the Social Situation of Mental Patients and Other Inmates. The book has been described as ethnography of the concept of a total institution. The book was one of the first sociological examinations of the social situation of mental patients in psychiatric hospitals and a major contribution to understanding of social aspects of mental illness. The book is composed of 4 essays, Characteristics of Total Institutions, The Moral Career of the Mental Patient, The Underlife of a Public Institution, a study of ways of making out in a mental hospital, and The Medical Model and Mental Hospitalization, some notes on the vicissitudes of the tinkering trades. The first 3 essays focus on the experiences of patients. The last, on professional-client interactions. Goffman is mainly concerned with the details of psychiatric hospitalization and with the nature and effects of the process he calls institutionalization. He describes how institutionalization socializes people into the role of a good patient, someone dull, harmless and inconspicuous, a condition which in turn reinforces notions of chronicity and severe mental illness. Total institutions greatly affect people's interactions. Yet, even in such places, people find ways to redefine their roles and reclaim their identities. Asylums has been credited with helping catalyze the reform of mental health systems in a number of countries, leading to reductions in the numbers of large mental hospitals and of the individuals locked up in them. It has also been influential in the anti-psychiatry movement. Behavior in public. In Behavior in Public Places, Goffman again focuses on everyday public interactions. He draws distinctions between several types of public gatherings and types of audiences. Stigma, Goffman's book Stigma, Notes on the Management of Spoiled Identity examines how, to protect their identities when they depart from approved standards of behavior or appearance, people manage impressions of themselves mainly through concealment. Stigma pertains to the shame that a person may feel when he or she fails to meet other people's standards, and to the fear of being discredited which causes the individual not to reveal his or her shortcomings. Thus, a person with a criminal record may simply withhold that information from fear of being judged by whomever that person happens to encounter. Interaction Ritual, Essays on Face-to-Face Behavior is a collection of 6 Goffman essays. The first 4 were originally published in the 1950s, the 5th in 1964, and the last was written for the collection. They include, On Face Work, Embarrassment and Social Organization, The Nature of Deference and Demeanor, Alienation from Interaction, Mental Symptoms and Public Order, and Where the Action Is. The first essay, On Face Work, discusses the concept of face, which is the positive self-image that an individual holds when interacting with others. Goffman believes that face is a sociological construct of interaction, is neither inherent in nor a permanent aspect of the person. Once an individual offers a positive self-image of him or herself to others, that individual feels a need to maintain and live up to that image. Inconsistency in how a person projects him or herself in society risks embarrassment and discrediting. Therefore people remain guarded, to ensure that they do not show themselves to others in an unfavorable light. Strategic Interaction, Goffman's book Strategic Interaction is his contribution to game theory. It discusses the compatibility of game theory with the legacy of the Chicago School of Sociology and with the perspective of symbolic interactionism. It is one of his few works that clearly engage with that perspective. Goffman's view on game theory was shaped by the works of Thomas Schelling. Goffman presents reality as a form of game, and discusses its rules and the various moves that players can make. Frame Analysis, an essay on the organization of experience is Goffman's attempt to explain how conceptual frames are ways to organize experience structure an individual's perception of society. This book is thus about the organization of experience rather than the organization of society. A frame is a set of concepts and theoretical perspectives that organize experiences and guide the actions of individuals, groups and societies. Frame analysis, then, is the study of the organization of social experience. To illustrate the concept of the frame, Goffman gives the example of a picture frame. A person uses the frame to hold together his picture of what he is experiencing in his life. The most basic frames are called primary frameworks. A primary framework takes an individual's experience or an aspect of a scene that would originally be meaningless and makes it meaningful. One type of primary framework is a natural framework, which identifies situations in the natural world and is completely biophysical, with no human influences. The other type of framework is a social framework, which explains events and connects them to humans. An example of a natural framework is the weather, and an example of a social framework is a meteorologist who predicts the weather. Focusing on the social frameworks, Goffman seeks to construct a general statement regarding the structure, or form, of experiences individuals have at any moment of their social life. Goffman saw this book as his magnum opus, but it was not as popular as his earlier works. Forms of Talk, Goffman's book, Forms of Talk, includes 5 essays, replies and responses. Response Cries, Footing, The Lecture, and Radio Talk. Each essay addresses both verbal and non-verbal communication through a sociolinguistic model. The book provides a comprehensive overview of the study of talk. In the introduction, Goffman identifies 3 themes that recur throughout the text: ritualization, participation framework, and embedding. The first essay, Replies and Responses, concerns conversational dialogue, and the way people respond during a conversation, both verbally and non-verbally. The second essay, Response Cries, considers the use of utterances and their social implications in different social contexts. Specifically, Goffman discusses self-talk, and its role in social situations. Next, in footing, Goffman addresses the way that footing, or alignment, can shift during a conversation. The fourth essay, The Lecture, originally an oral presentation, describes different types and methods of lecture. Lastly, in radio talk, Goffman describes the types and forms of talk used in radio programming and the effect they have on listeners. Positions. In his career, Goffman worked at the University of Chicago, Division of Social Sciences, Chicago, assistant, 1952 euro 53. Resident associate, 1953 euro 54. National Institute of Mental Health, Bethesda, Maryland, visiting scientist, 1954 euro 57. University of California, Berkeley, assistant professor, 1957 euro 59. Professor, 1959 euro 62. Professor of Sociology, 1962 euro 68. University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Benjamin Franklin Professor of Anthropology and Sociology, 1969 euro 82. See also, American Association for the Abolition of Involuntary Mental Hospitalization, Franco Basaglia, Deinstitutionalization, The Radical Therapist, Selected Works, 1959, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, University of Edinburgh Social Sciences Research Centre. ISBN 978-0-14-013571-8. Anchor Books Edition, 1961, Asylums Essays on the Social Situation of Mental Patients and Other Inmates. New York, Doubleday. ISBN 0-14-013739-4, 1961, Encounters 2 Studies in the Sociology of Interaction Euro Fun in Games and Role Distance. Indianapolis, Bobbs Merrill, 1963, Behavior in Public Places, Notes on the Social Organization of Gatherings, The Free Press. ISBN 0-02-911940-5, 1963, Stigma Notes on the Management of Spoiled Identity. Prentice Hall. ISBN 0-671-62244-7, 1967, Interaction Ritual, Essays on Face-to-Face Behavior. Anchor Books. ISBN 0-394-70631-5, 1969, Strategic Interaction. Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania Press. ISBN 0-345-02804-X, 1969, Where the Action Is. Allen Lane. ISBN 0-7139-0079-2, 1971, Relations in Public, Micro-Studies of the Public Order. New York, Basic Books. ISBN 0-06-131957-0, 1974, Frame Analysis, An Essay on the Organization of Experience. London, Harper and Row. ISBN 978-0-06-090372-5, 1979, Gender Advertisements, Macmillan. ISBN 0-06-132076-5, 1981, Forms of Talk, Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania Press. ISBN 978-0-8122-7790-6, References, Notes. Bibliography, Burns, Tom. Erving Goffman. London. New York, Routledge. ISBN A0415064929, Burns, Tom. Erving Goffman. Routledge. ISBN A0203-20550-2, Elliott, Anthony. Ray, Larry J. Key Contemporary Social Theorists. Blackwell Publishers Limited. ISBN A0-631-21972-2, Fine, Gary Allen. Philip Manning. Erving Goffman. In George Ritzer. The Blackwell Companion to Major Contemporary Social Theorists. Blackwell Publishing Limited. ISBN A9780470999912. Fine, Gary Allen. Smith, Gregory W. H. Erving Goffman Volume 1 A-4. Sage. ISBN A0-7619-6863-6. Smith, Greg. Erving Goffman. Hoboken, Routledge. ISBN A978-0-203-00234-6. Trevino, A. Javier. Goffman's Legacy. Lanham, Maryland Rowman and Littlefield Publishers. ISBN A07425197775. Winkeen, Eve. Leeds Hurwitz, Wendy. Erving Goffman, A Critical Introduction to Media and Communication Theory. New York, Peter Lang. ISBN A143310993-X. Further reading, Derda, Michael. Waiting for Goffman, Latham's Quarterly. ISSN 1935-7494, Ditton, Jason. The View of Goffman, New York, St. Martina Unregistered Trademark S. Press. ISBN 0312845981, Drew, Paul. Anthony J. Wooten. Erving Goffman, Exploring the Interaction Order. Polity Press. ISBN A978-0-7456-0393-3. Goffman, Erving. Leamet, Charles. Brannaman, Anne. The Goffman Reader. Wiley Blackwell. ISBN A1-55786-894-8. Manning, Philip. Erving Goffman and Modern Sociology. Stanford University Press. ISBN A978-0-8047-2026-7. Sheff, Thomas J. Goffman Unbound. A New Paradigm for Social Science. Paradigm Publishers. ISBN A978-1-59451-195-0. Verhoeven, J. An Interview with Erving Goffman. Research on Language and Social Interaction, 26, 317 A-348. Verhoeven, J. Backstage with Erving Goffman, The Context of the Interview. Research on Language and Social Interaction. 26 ppA 307 A-31. External links, Algazi, Gardi. Erving Goffman, A Bibliography, Department of History, Tel Aviv University, Brackwood, B. Diane Erving Goffman, McGill's Guide to 20th Century Authors. Pasadena, California, Salem Press. Kavan, Sherry, When Erving Goffman Was a Boy. Erving Goffman Archive, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Dear Habermas, Articles on Goffman, California State University, Dominguez Hills. A listing of further reading and online resources. Delaney, Michael. Erving Goffman, Professional and Personal Timeline, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Tuba, Andreas. Erving Goffman Biography, Brandeis University, Uncooling the Mark Out, Some Aspects of Adaptation to Failure, Erving Goffman.